Florida has long been known as one of America's fastest-growing states, which makes this first hook especially surprising. Even in a place famous for attracting newcomers, some cities are now seeing more residents move out than in. That doesn't mean Florida is suddenly emptying, but it does reveal that migration inside the state is far more complex than the headlines suggest. The second hook is that people don't usually leave cities for just one reason. Rising housing costs, insurance premiums, traffic, climate concerns, and changing work patterns often stack on top of each other. When several pressures hit at once, families start running the numbers and exploring alternatives. The third hook is that outmigration doesn't always signal collapse. Cities can lose residents while still having strong economies, tourism industries, and construction activity. Sometimes people simply relocate to nearby suburbs, smaller towns, or other states that better match their current priorities. And the fourth hook is this. For every person leaving one Florida city, someone else is often arriving in another part of the state. Understanding which places are losing population and why helps explain how Florida itself is evolving. Florida's growth story has never been uniform. Coastal metros, inland retirement hubs, tourism centers, and agricultural communities all experience different cycles. Over the years, development, hurricanes, housing booms, and job creation have reshaped where people settle. Today's movements reflect those same forces, just in a new phase. One of the biggest drivers behind relocation is housing affordability. In many Florida cities, home prices and rents climbed rapidly during the early 2020s. That growth benefited property owners, but it also stretched budgets for renters and first-time buyers. When monthly payments rise faster than incomes, households begin searching for lower-cost alternatives, sometimes only a few counties away. Insurance has become another major factor. Florida's exposure to hurricanes, flooding, and coastal storms has led to rising property insurance premiums in certain regions. Even homeowners who bought years ago sometimes face large increases, making long-term budgeting more difficult. For people on fixed incomes, that uncertainty can be especially stressful. Traffic congestion and commuting times also shape decisions. Rapid growth in popular metro areas has strained roads and public services. What once felt like a manageable drive can slowly turn into a daily frustration, pushing residents to consider quieter or less crowded communities. Climate and weather risks are part of the equation too. Hurricanes, storm surge, and flooding don't affect every neighborhood equally, but repeated evacuation orders or repair cycles can wear on residents over time. Some families decide they would rather live farther inland or in areas they perceive as lower risk. Work patterns have shifted dramatically in recent years, and Florida is no exception. Remote and hybrid jobs give workers more freedom to choose where they live. That flexibility allows people to leave expensive coastal metros while keeping their income, moving to smaller cities or even other states where housing costs are lower. Lifestyle preferences change with age and family stage. Young professionals may prioritize nightlife and dense urban centers, while later they might want larger homes, quieter streets, and strong schools. Retirees often focus on healthcare access, predictable expenses, and low-maintenance living. As priorities evolve, so do addresses. It's also important to separate citywide numbers from neighborhood-level reality. One part of metro area might be booming with new apartments and residents, while another section quietly shrinks. Population data reflects these internal shifts, not just dramatic exits across entire cities. Media headlines sometimes oversimplify the story, suggesting that people are abandoning certain places en masse. In reality, most moves are calculated and personal. Families weigh spreadsheets, job offers, school districts, and proximity to relatives long before loading a moving truck. Florida's economy remains diverse, with tourism, healthcare, logistics, aerospace, and construction employing millions. Even cities that lose some residents continue to attract businesses and visitors. Population movement is about adjustment, not disappearance. In this video, we'll take a closer look at 5 Florida cities that have seen notable resident departures in recent years and explore the most common reasons people cite for leaving. The goal isn't to criticize these places, they still offer opportunity and appeal to many, but to understand what pressures are shaping decisions. In the next part, we'll begin examining the first group of cities on the list and the local factors that residents often mention when explaining why they decided to move. The first hook in this section is that Florida's most desirable coastal cities are often the same places where living costs have risen the fastest. Ocean views, booming tourism, and warm weather continue to attract newcomers, but those same features also push prices higher, creating pressure on long-term residents. The second hook is that rising costs don't affect everyone equally. Renters, young families, service workers, and retirees on fixed incomes often feel the squeeze first. When renewals jump sharply or insurance premiums climb, households start reconsidering whether staying makes sense. The third hook is that some residents don't move far at all. Instead of leaving Florida entirely, they relocate from dense coastal cores to inland suburbs or smaller cities where housing is cheaper and traffic is lighter. That internal migration still shows up as population loss for specific cities. The fourth hook is that congestion has become a daily quality of life issue. Rapid development brings jobs and amenities, but it can also overwhelm roads, schools, and utilities if infrastructure doesn't keep pace. In several large Florida metros, housing demand surged faster than supply during recent years. Apartment complexes filled quickly. Home listings sparked bidding wars, and prices climbed. Even when construction increased, it often lagged behind population growth, keeping rents elevated. Property insurance has added to the financial strain, especially in coastal and flood-prone areas. Premium increases, stricter coverage terms, and higher deductibles have made some homeowners rethink long-term plans. While not every neighborhood faces the same rates, the uncertainty alone pushes some families to explore alternatives. Transportation is another challenge in crowded urban areas. Commutes stretch longer as roads fill up, and public transit options remain limited in many regions. What once felt like a short drive can slowly become a daily stressor, especially for workers traveling during peak hours. Tourism plays a dual role in these cities. It brings jobs, entertainment, and global visibility, but can also drive up housing costs and seasonal congestion. Short-term rentals sometimes reduce the number of long-term units available, adding pressure to local markets. Climate risks intersect with urban density in coastal areas. Storm surge, flooding, and hurricane evacuations can disrupt life more dramatically in packed neighborhoods. Repeated repairs and rising maintenance costs affect both landlords and homeowners, shaping relocation decisions. Some residents also cite crowding itself as a reason for leaving. Packed beaches, busy downtown districts, and constant construction can wear on people who once loved the energy. Over time, the desire for space and quiet can outweigh the excitement of urban living. Yet it's important to note that these cities still attract large numbers of newcomers. International migration, retirees, and job seekers continue to arrive. Population loss in certain years or neighborhoods does not erase the overall appeal of Florida's coastline. It simply shows how fast growth can change local dynamics. Local governments respond in different ways. Some invest heavily in transit, flood protection, and housing development. Others focus on zoning reforms or insurance market adjustments. These efforts can slow or reverse out migration, but results take time. Businesses adapt as well. Retailers open in growing suburbs, while offices expand into less congested areas. These shifts influence where employees choose to live, reinforcing migration patterns within metro regions. In the next part, we'll move beyond general pressures and start discussing specific Florida cities that have seen notable resident departures, along with the most common local factors people mention when explaining why they moved. The first hook in this section is that the cities people leave are rarely failing cities. Many of them remain economic engines, tourism hubs, and cultural centers. What changes is how affordable and comfortable they feel for everyday residents over time. The second hook is that departures often come from longtime locals rather than short-term visitors. People who built their lives in these cities sometimes decide that rising expenses and daily stress outweigh the benefits that once attracted them. The third hook is that most residents don't leave impulsively. Moves are usually preceded by years of watching rent climb, insurance increase, commutes lengthen, and neighborhoods grow denser. When enough pressures stack up, relocation becomes the practical choice. The fourth hook is that leaving one city doesn't always mean leaving Florida. Many people relocate to nearby inland communities or smaller metros, keeping jobs, family ties, and social networks intact while lowering housing costs. One major Florida city that has experienced resident departures in recent years is Miami. Known globally for beaches, nightlife, and international business, Miami has also seen rapid increases in rents and home prices. Property insurance and flood risk concerns have become part of the conversation for homeowners, while congestion and seasonal crowding affect daily routines. Another city often discussed in migration data is Tampa. While the broader region continues to grow, certain neighborhoods have seen residents move away as housing costs rise and development accelerates. Traffic congestion and rising property taxes have been cited by some households as growing frustrations. Orlando appears in relocation discussions as well, particularly among renters. Tourism drives much of the economy, but it can also influence housing availability and seasonal price fluctuations. Workers in hospitality and service industries sometimes struggle to keep pace with rent increases, prompting moves to surrounding counties. Jacksonville presents a different case. As one of Florida's largest cities by land area, it contains both fast-growing suburbs and older neighborhoods that have seen population declines. Some residents move for job opportunities elsewhere, while others seek newer housing developments farther from the urban core. Fort Lauderdale is another coastal city where residents sometimes relocate after facing higher living costs and insurance bills. Like Miami, its waterfront location brings both appeal and exposure to storm-related expenses. For some families, the trade-offs eventually shift. It's important to emphasize that these cities still attract newcomers. Miami continues to draw international residents and entrepreneurs. Tampa remains a magnet for retirees and remote workers. Orlando adds new residents through tourism-driven growth and construction. Jacksonville attracts logistics and manufacturing investment. Fort Lauderdale remains popular with seasonal residents. Population change reflects churn as much as exit. New arrivals replace those who leave, keeping economies active even as demographics shift. The question isn't whether these cities are emptying out, it's which groups are leaving and why. In many cases, residents moving out are middle-income households squeezed by costs rather than high earners or investors. Rising rents, insurance, childcare, and commuting expenses can hit these families hardest. Retirees also play a role. Some choose to move to inland Florida communities or other states where housing and insurance are cheaper, even if they once planned to stay on the coast permanently. Young professionals may relocate for career growth, especially if opportunities in their field appear stronger elsewhere. Others stay, but move within metro regions to reduce expenses. Neighborhood-level shifts matter too. New luxury developments can price out long-time renters, while redevelopment can change the character of districts. These micro-level changes accumulate into city-wide patterns. Local governments track these trends carefully, adjusting housing policies, transit investments, and infrastructure spending to retain residents. Some cities push for more affordable housing development, while others focus on flood protection and transportation upgrades. In the next part, we'll look at how Florida cities and state officials respond to these population shifts, and what strategies are being used to keep residents from moving away. The first hook in this section is that cities don't simply watch residents leave without reacting. Local governments, developers, and business leaders track migration closely and often launch initiatives designed to keep people rooted or attract them back. The second hook is that solutions take time. Infrastructure upgrades, housing construction, and insurance reforms don't change conditions overnight, which means population trends can continue for years, even after policy responses begin. The third hook is that not all strategies work equally well. What succeeds in one metro area might fall flat in another depending on geography, demographics, and local economies. The fourth hook is that some cities manage to stabilize or reverse losses by directly addressing the issues residents complain about most, particularly housing costs, transportation congestion, and climate resilience. Housing policy sits at the center of many responses. Cities encourage higher density development near transit corridors, loosen zoning rules to allow accessory dwelling units, and partner with private developers to increase rental supply. These measures aim to relieve pressure by expanding inventory, though critics argue they can take years to noticeably affect prices. Transportation investments are another common approach. Expanding highways, adding express lanes, upgrading bus networks, and planning rail systems are designed to shorten commutes and reduce daily stress. When residents feel mobility improving, satisfaction can rise. Flood mitigation and climate adaptation are major priorities in coastal Florida. Cities invest in seawalls, drainage systems, road elevation projects, and stormwater upgrades to protect neighborhoods. These projects not only reduce physical risk, but also influence insurance markets and homeowner confidence. Insurance affordability has become a particularly complex issue. State leaders and regulators explore ways to stabilize markets, encourage new insurers to operate, and limit sudden premium spikes. While progress varies, these efforts matter greatly to homeowners deciding whether to stay. Economic diversification plays a role as well. Cities' core industries beyond tourism, such as technology, healthcare, finance, and logistics. Broadening the job base creates more stable employment and attracts higher wages, which can offset living costs. Local governments also focus on quality of life improvements. Park expansions, waterfront revitalization, cultural districts, and neighborhood redevelopment projects aim to make urban living more attractive despite higher density. These investments can retain residents who might otherwise leave. Public safety initiatives matter too. When residents feel secure walking in their neighborhoods and using public spaces, attachment to a city strengthens. Police reform programs, community partnerships, and lighting upgrades are part of these strategies. Education systems influence long-term decisions, especially for families. Cities work with school districts to improve facilities, expand magnet programs, and build new campuses in growing areas. Strong schools can anchor households even when housing prices rise. Some municipalities target retirees with age-friendly infrastructure, healthcare access, and tax incentives, recognizing that older residents represent a stable population base. Community engagement is another piece of the puzzle. Town halls, planning sessions, and resident surveys give people a voice in shaping development. Feeling heard can reduce frustration and increase willingness to stay through periods of change. Despite these efforts, challenges remain. Construction costs, environmental risks, and rapid population growth strain budgets. Not every project succeeds, and some residents leave before improvements materialize. Private developers also shape outcomes. Mixed-use projects, suburban-style communities on city edges, and new apartment complexes change where people choose to live within metro regions, sometimes shifting populations rather than reversing losses. In the final part, we'll bring everything together by examining what these trends mean for Florida's future and how residents and prospective movers can interpret migration data realistically. The first hook in this closing section is that population movement rarely tells a simple story. A city losing residents one year might stabilize or rebound the next, while another continues to grow rapidly. Migration reflects changing personal priorities more than sudden collapse. The second hook is that many people leaving Florida cities are not rejecting the state entirely. They're relocating within it. Moves to inland counties, smaller metros, or newer suburban developments often satisfy the same lifestyle goals at a lower cost. The third hook is that perception matters almost as much as reality. Rising insurance premiums, traffic congestion, or storm risks don't need to affect everyone equally to influence behavior. The expectation of future costs can be enough to motivate relocation. The fourth hook is that Florida remains one of the most mobile states in the country. People arrive from other regions, leave for new opportunities, and shift between cities frequently. This constant churn keeps housing markets and local economies in motion. Looking ahead, housing affordability will remain central. Construction levels, zoning reforms, interest rates, and demand from newcomers will determine whether prices stabilize or continue rising in major metros. Cities that successfully expand supply may retain more residents. Climate adaptation will also shape Florida's future. Investments in drainage systems, building codes, flood protection, and energy grids influence whether people feel confident staying long-term. Communities that demonstrate resilience may maintain population levels even in risk-prone regions. Insurance markets will continue to affect decisions. If premiums stabilize, pressure on homeowners could ease. If costs rise further, more households may consider relocating to less expensive areas. Economic diversity is another key factor. Cities that attract a mix of industries beyond tourism and construction may hold residents more effectively, offering stable employment and upward mobility. Transportation remains crucial. Regions that reduce commute times through infrastructure upgrades or smart growth planning can improve daily life and discourage outmigration. Education and healthcare access will influence family decisions. Strong school systems and well-distributed medical facilities anchor populations even in higher-cost areas. For individuals watching these trends, the most important takeaway is caution when interpreting headlines. "Everyone is leaving" is rarely accurate. Population shifts are uneven, gradual, and driven by personal circumstances rather than sweeping abandonment. Prospective movers should evaluate neighborhoods rather than entire cities, run detailed budgets, and consider long-term risks and opportunities. Visiting potential locations, speaking with residents, and reviewing public data helps ground decisions in reality. Florida cities losing some residents are not disappearing. They continue to host businesses, cultural events, tourists, and new development. Outmigration reflects adjustment, not erasure. At the same time, smaller cities and suburbs gaining residents must expand housing, schools, roads, and utilities to keep pace. Growth brings opportunity, but also new challenges. Florida's story is one of constant reinvention. From coastal resorts to inland retirement communities to logistics hubs, its cities evolve with economic cycles and demographic change. The movements happening today will shape where homes are built, where businesses invest, and how communities plan for decades to come. Ultimately, migration is about choice. People search for affordability, safety, opportunity, comfort, and connection. Florida's cities, like all American cities, compete to meet those needs in a changing world.